Welcome to the Security by Default podcast, the podcast where firewalls are hot, passwords are long and strong, and cybercriminals are probably listening to. I'm your host, Joseph Carson, ethical hacker, security nerd, and the guy who reads the terms and conditions so you don't have to. Each episode will break down the weird, wild world of cybersecurity, minus the jargon, and plus a few laughs. Whether you're a pro or just here to figure out what the hell zero trust really means, you're in the right place. Let's get secure and have a little fun on the way too. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Security by Default podcast. I'm the host, Joe Carson, and it's a pleasure to always bring you thought-provoking ideas, creative, innovative discussions in order to keep you up to date with all the hot trends and topics around cybersecurity. And I've been waiting for this type of episode for quite a long time, and I'm really excited to have an amazing guest, a fellow countryman from Ireland, so it's always great. Hopefully, we won't have to do too much translation and subtitles in this episode if I get into my natural local language, but we'll try to keep it as clear as possible. So Peadar, welcome to the episode. You want to give the audience a bit of background about yourself, what you do, and maybe how you got into the industry as well. It's always an interesting origin story.
So I'm actually a game designer by trade. So, originally I was a teacher, and I became very, very interested in how we could get people to learn very difficult and complicated subjects, how we could get people to engage with things that are hard to understand, hard to conceptualize, hard to work with. So I went from being a teacher to studying how games help learning, and how does this impact with situations like that. How I got into cybersecurity, well, I met a friend at a bar.
Typically, where it all starts in the pub.
Where it all starts. I met a friend at a bar, and we were chatting away, and I was like, so what brings you to Tallinn? I'm here studying to be a learning game designer. And their response was, oh, I do cybersecurity. Do you want to take a look at a game that I developed to help people understand cybersec? And I went, sure, I'll take a look at it. It sounds interesting. I went and took a little bit of a look and went, okay, you could improve it by maybe doing this or maybe doing that. Or is this really the message that you're wanting to send? Or is this how you want to work this out? I had a long discussion with them, and then we published a couple of white papers together. And when I started to look around for projects to pursue my PhD, I decided that I would incorporate cybersecurity into it.
Awesome.
So I'm very much a Luddite in some regards when it comes to the technical side of things. But what I do is I bring the understanding of the gameplay and the psychology to the space. And this is actually really quite an important thing to do. Because you get a lot of technical people getting trained up via the technical skills, but the issue with cybersecurity isn't just the technical. It's getting the technical to talk with the non-technical, getting the management to understand what it is that the technical is saying, and finding a commonality and a common language to link those all together.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And we've had that. I mean, that's been a problem it's challenged many times over the years. You know, we go back into the 90s and we actually created the whole IT service desk that was just to solve that problem. They were meant to be the intersection between technical and the business. And so the whole industry was created out of that problem. But we've got into where I think the massive change in this, industry is that it's no longer just an IT problem, and it's no longer security is just an IT problem. It's become that security and IT is now very much a business problem. So the people that historically support we're talking to, which was, tends to be more like technical users, now we're getting into where it's not just technical users, it's the business. And they speak a very different language, which is typically lost in translation many times.
And one of the things that games do that are absolutely fabulous is they teach you a new language. You start to form a shorthand to communicate with each other, and you start to be able to empathize with each other and empathize with how the other person's role is going. So the thing that I've looked at in my PhD research is how are games used in cybersecurity training? And there is that differentiation, and we have to make that differentiation between the ones that are being used primarily by the technical audience and the people with the master's degrees in cybersec or in information technology or whatever, and the games that then act as bridges and help the understanding between those two, the disparate groups.
Can you share what's some of the fundamentals of a game? What's the base? Let's start with, typically for me, when I get into learning a new game, like the game that you created, which is the one that I'm showing with the audience here, which for me was very interesting, and I've came across different card games over the years. For me, some of the game elements, when I'm playing games with the kids, we do a lot of escape rooms, and typically you've got some type of basis of the rules, the rule book, and stuff. So what is the fundamental elements of a game? And then we can get into some of the kind of crossover section.
A very deep question that could take about 3 hours. So I'll go with my personal favorite definition, which is taken from the philosopher Bernard Suits and adapted by Jane McGonigal, who wrote Reality is Broken. If you ever get a chance, read Reality is Broken.
It's now on my list of books to read.
Absolutely amazing book. A game has consists of 4 discrete elements, or 4 things that make a game. So a game has a goal, something that you're attempting to achieve. It has rules which make achieving the goal more difficult, not easier.
Okay.
And this is really important. It has a feedback system, a method for us to see that we're moving towards our goal.
Good progress.
That progress is being made, and we can see that it's going in that direction. And finally, it is voluntarily entered into. You can't force somebody to play a game. And this is one of the problems that I have with a lot of people who end up doing work in the area of serious games or security training games. They try to grab the player by the scruff of the neck and force them into the training environment.
You have to want to do it.
You have to want to do it.
Otherwise, you won't meet the fundamental of what you're saying is if you're not willingly participating, you're not going to meet the goal.
Yes. This is kind of fundamental to it. The other aspect of it is the old adage of you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
Exactly.
In this case, you can lead players to information, but you can't make them think.
Consume it. And you want it also, you don't want it to sit in their short-term memory. It's just a moment of the game. You want this to be something that gets ingrained.
Yeah.
It becomes permanent memory.
Well, not just permanent memory, you want it to impact behavior. And if you're looking to impact behavior, then we have to look at how it works that way. But to go back to the 4 components, let's take an example of a game. Would you care to throw one out there?
Let's do Risk.
Risk.
That's one of my kind of favorites. And Monopoly as well. It's pretty much.
Well, let's go with Risk, because I personally believe that the best way to play Monopoly is by throwing it out a window while it is set on fire. But
we like quick round Monopoly, which is the fun part. but let's stick with Risk.
Okay, so the goal of Risk is to take over the world. However, you can't just do it by putting your pieces on everywhere and just brushing everybody's pieces aside. Then you're not playing Risk. You're just putting pieces on a map. The rules make achieving the goal more difficult. You have to roll a certain amount of dice. You have to move your components in the various places. You get a feedback. You get the game state to show you where you are and what's going on. And then, of course, you have voluntary. You can't force somebody to play Risk. You put a gun to my head and tell me to play Risk. I'm no longer playing Risk. I'm playing Please Don't Shoot Me.
Yes, it's a different goal and motive.
Yeah, but the thing is that model, that 4-step model, or that 4 components, the word is defeating me for a second.
The rules that we have.
Yeah, it's a structuralist view of what a game is. This can be applied to training. This can be applied to training. This can be applied to education. This can be applied to all manner of different environments. And if you want to make the environment more engaging, applying those ideas and those concepts to it will really make the situation much more interesting and engaging for your audience from the start. If you just want somebody to do something again and again and again and again and again, adding constraints and rules into it with a feedback system is going to encourage them to do it. If we take a look from the cybersecurity perspective, the classic example of this would be the capture the flag exercises.
Yep. That's what I'm pretty familiar with. That's one of my favorite things to do. If I have enough time, I'd be playing CTFs all day long.
Yeah. But the thing is that that's the exact word there. You'd be playing CTFs the whole day long. The CTF is by its very nature a game. It has a goal. It has rules that are encoded into the system and also social rules that make achieving that goal more difficult. It has a feedback system that you're aware of, and you can't force yourself to play. You can decide, you can be encouraged to play, but you can't be forced to. And the cyber ranges, CTFs, all of those activities that are commonly used for training technical workers are at their very essence games. And that's part of what makes them engaging. The issue that I have with a lot of the games that are used in the cybersecurity training space is that they tend to suffer from feature creep and bloat. So they might start off very small, simple, clean, crisp, and everything like that. But somebody goes, yes, but can't we add? Can't we add another element here and another element here? And suddenly you're ending up with a game that has slowly expanded out to the point where it becomes difficult to set up.
It's overly complex.
Overly complex to explain. I don't know if you've ever played any major war games like Axis and Allies or games like that.
Not that I recall, not in a long time.
Okay. Well, the thing with Axis and Allies is it takes several hours and a rule book about this thick that you have to read to be able to play the game. The cost of entry starts to go up.
Yeah. Even I think one game that reminds me of is this Scythe, the bird game. That we have it at home, and I remember, sitting down, I was like, okay, how do we play this game? And I was just like, oh my goodness, I had to watch hours of videos.
Yeah.
Just for the entry into, I understand that when you start playing the game and you start understanding it, that it becomes very, very exciting and intriguing, and the progress and the goals and that feedback loop is there. But the entry level, it just becomes way too much for the average person who wants to just play a game. It's just, the rule book has to be something that very simple, quick to get started. But when that becomes almost like a game in itself to learn how to play the game, it becomes a blocker.
Yeah. And this is an issue. We have a tendency, especially in training games, of there being a pressure to complexity, and there being a pressure to build more and more and add new elements to it. When sometimes what you should be doing is producing something smaller scale that is quick and easy and gets people onto the same page. And this is a gap in the marketplace for those types of training games and those types of training experiences.
Absolutely. Just thinking about some of the platforms out there, I absolutely know that, even just the technical requirements to get onto those environments also becomes a constraint as well.
Well, the thing is, if you're trying to get people to... Games can serve multiple purposes. Even within training. In fact, my current article that I'm working on in my PhD is looking at all the different ways that games can be used in a training modality. I'm presenting a framework to understand how learning happens in games. And understanding this also makes you realize that a game that does this thing is not the same and is not the same as a game that does this. And the constraints and the design decisions that you make to focus it in this direction are different from the design constraints and decisions you make to focus in this direction. So, for example, the CTFs and the cyber ranges, they're very practice orientated. But there's a high cost of entry.
Yep. They're very focused on getting habit, is getting the natural kind of like, you practice. For me, it's almost like playing sports. I play football on a regular basis, hopefully back on Wednesday this week, which I'm excited about, because you've seen me in crutches in the past. I'm hoping that, my injuries are now behind me. But for me, it's that we're the practice side of things. And I think that's a lot of where the hacking gamification platforms today are, to have that element of practice and simulate. But I agree, the entry level is way too high. It's too high. And it takes, I created a training course to get started, an introduction into hacking gamification, because for people to get started, you can get lost very, very quickly.
And the other thing is that this isn't actually the gap. As we talked about earlier, the gap isn't getting people to practice technically. There's solutions available for that. The gap is getting the non-technical people to be able to interface with the technical people. And it turns out that we don't need practice games for that. What we need are what I call conceptual transfer games.
Yep.
And they're more communicative.
Translations. It's like, on one side of the card is I remember the game is that you create the card game.
Yeah.
One side's the technical aspect, and the other side's the business aspect of things. Is the impact. So what's the risk and what's the impact of the business, and that's what we absolutely need to translate. It's about training the business into that. What does a ransomware mean to the business? What does a phishing compromise mean to the business? And having those translations and overlap. It's about a game that has a minimal a minimal entry level barrier for everyone to get started.
And oddly enough, there are good models for this. There are really good game models for this. A lot of role-playing games are great exemplars. We can see from the history of wargaming, we can see the movement from the rigid wargaming, the practice rigid wargaming, towards more open, fluid models with matrix wargaming and with seminar gaming and Paul Mill gaming. So there are ways of doing it. We just have to not get stuck in the idea that there is but one type of game, and this one type fits all of the situations that we have or that we want. The other fun one that I promised I would bring up, because I was thinking about, is to just talk a little bit about the link between the very first computer game and security. So the very first computer game out there, it was a thing called Space War. And in Space War, the object of it was to shoot down incoming missiles.
Yep. It was with the little. I wrote the book, or not wrote. I read. I didn't know. I wish I wrote the book. I did not, but I read the book a while back on the history of games, which was fascinating, and it tells you the whole journey. But yeah, absolutely the Space War.
Well,
it was.
Did
impressive.
They mention where it was coded?
If I remember, it was MIT. Or Berkeley.
It was a security studies group.
Okay.
And the reason why they had access to the computer to code it was that they were using the computer to look at missile flights for security studies. So they stole time on the machine
the BBM.
to write a game. And this is the first computer game that we have that we can trace back. So there is a fundamental desire to play. There is a desire to play, a need to play. And the average gamer age is now about 36, 37.
Shocking. It is shocking that's because my childhood was spent playing lots of games. Yeah. Actually, the whole reason, I remember it was when I was about 7 or 8 years old, I took a trip, went to Belgium, and spent time with the family there over the summer. And the boy that was living, in the house had an Atari 2600, and we played tanks, and we played, Pac-Man, and all the kind of really popular games back then. And that for me was a whole new world that opened up that I'd never seen before, and that that started even for me when I came home. I was like, I want an Atari 2600 to my parents for Christmas. Unfortunately, what arrived was an Atari 800 STXL, which was not a games console. It was a computer, but it meant that I saw a funny post the other day of somebody saying, that about all of the code they got in the magazines every month, and you had to type that in basic, and then you hope that when you compile, it actually worked, but half the time it didn't. Then there was a correction in the month later saying the code that we published last month, there was a mistake in line 200 and something. So for me, that's actually shocking that the average age is that old. I guess the methodology is changing, that people are just watching other people play games.
Yeah. Well,
it's more of a consumption than it is of a participation.
The thing is that it's the window is shifting. So you have more older people now playing and playing regularly. You have people, they started to introduce the Nintendo Wii into old people.
Care homes for the
elderly homes, because it encouraged them to do minor activity and action.
Yeah.
Have Oddly enough, one of the most prominent places where Dungeons and Dragons is played is in death row inmates in the United States.
That's unbelievable. Because Dungeons and Dragons, though, that's a very mentally, like,
Yes.
kind of, I think
Involved and engaging game.
yeah, you have to storytelling, and you have to be mentally there, and you have to kind of really think, about the entire kind of
But
landscape.
you can imagine how that would be incredibly useful if you were in prison. Suddenly you have a method of not being restrained. So gameplay, one of the great books out there, or one of the great books that is constantly referenced but is a nightmare to read, so I'm not going to recommend it for reading, is Homo Ludens by Hunsinger. And in that, he argues that all of human society is predicated or based on playing games. He argues that our law system is a game. Our religious systems are games. That, in fact, the entirety, the reason why humans are humans is that we play games. And we appear to be the only species that codify games and deliberately play games.
That's interesting. When you think about your four kind of components, it definitely applies to all of those. It applies to everything.
Well, my heretical question is, how is learning not a game? And I have yet to find somebody to give me a good answer on that one.
Yep.
But to go back to that one, there are things that are not games. Tying your shoelace is not a game. However, it can become a game very easily. Tying your shoelace, if you just tie it automatically as quickly as possible, it's not a game. If, however, I hand you 2 pairs of chopsticks and say you're not allowed to touch the shoelace, now it's a game.
Once you make the complexity, or you add some type of challenge.
Yeah. Once you make it a little bit more difficult. In many regards, cybersecurity can be looked at in this way. Are we deliberately solving the problem as quickly and efficiently as possible? Or are we deliberately exploring? Are we deliberately making it more difficult so that we increase the interest of the person who's engaged with it?
So what's the kind of future look like for this from your research and the doctorate you're doing? Where does the future look like we're going? What would be, in your mind, the ideal kind of scenario about how to make sure that we apply the components to training? Where's the direction and path we're going?
Well, there are a couple of different paths. The first path, as I said, is the practice route. And that's fairly well understood and fairly well sorted out and kept in order. The second one is the one that we talked about a fair bit, which is the connections, making the connections between the different either subject matter experts or the different stakeholders, getting them to actually work together. An area that I think is primarily missing is small-scale games that can be brought into a cyber training classroom. Games that act as metaphors for the thing that is being done, so that people can, the beautiful term from game design that has been adopted in game design, grokking. When you grok something, you don't just understand it, you understand it to a level that it has become part of who you are and part of your identity.
Okay.
And games are a really great way to get people to grok systems, to understand and internalize them. So we need more of those sort of small-scale experiential games. The little Cyber Rats one that you have there is an example of this. It's not designed to go in depth into anything. It's just designed to familiarize the people with some terminology and get them to go over it and be able to go, yes, no, okay. Hey, why does that work with that? Why does this work with this? And then that's the point where we have made them receptive to the education. And having those sort of small-scale icebreakers, receptive builders, are really important. When it comes to the more large-scale military and games like that, there is a nightmare with attempting to integrate cyber into a large-scale military-style training game. And the nightmare is that it works on different timelines. So you have to, ever since the 1700s, we've been able to just take a new weapon system and drop it into it and just go, okay, here's the new weapon system. Here's the stat line on it. Here's the stat block.
Yep.
Okay, and go. Cyber, because it's a completely artificial domain with incredible changeability inside of it makes it really, really difficult to drop directly into it. I wrote a small article 2-3 years ago about why it's really difficult to do this, which is, I think it's a good read, but I'm a little biased on that one. So so there are areas to go to on here. In terms of training, I would say that the most important thing for training audiences to realize is to get the management to realize that they need to do active training. Checkbox training is ineffective.
It's for me. Absolutely. I mean, I remember I've had a couple of CISOs on in the past, and they said, the only way to get people, it's a couple of, used the example of going onto a soccer field or a football field. If you have not practiced, you will not be ready to participate and contribute to the team. And even to the point for me, I've been, out of action with an injury for the past couple of months. And for me, even in order for me to prepare my comeback, which is tomorrow, we'll see how that goes. I've had to go and do simulations of alternative training, running, sprints, just to build up my stamina. Because if I think that tomorrow, if I'm going to go on the pitch and contribute to the same level I was before, it's not going to happen. And it's the same with tabletop exercises, is that you have to make sure, in order to do it, you have to do it in such a frequency that it does become a habit. To your point, it does become part of your DNA, part of yourself. That becomes second nature. That becomes that muscle memory, and that's the you have to think about how often do you need to do it, and is it the same thing that you do all the time, or is it just augmented, different perspectives?
The exact same time, you're not going to get that to take your analogy. I'm not going to get you trained up and ready to go back on the pitch by taking you into a classroom and getting you to answer a multiple choice questions.
Correct.
There's a fundamental difference between declarative knowledge and procedural knowledge. And there is a fundamental difference even still from procedural knowledge to application. Declarative knowledge, I'm able I can tell you exactly what you should do on a football pitch. I know the theory behind it very, very well. I even know some of the procedures of if this, then this, then this, then this, but there's no way in hell I can play. I haven't run after a ball in 30 years. So
it'd be interesting. One of the things, to that point, we talk about what was the Chinese whispers, scenarios and all of those things about, AI systems as well. We can think about is that if we give them the rule book, can they come up with what the game would look like in real, that type of, kind of scenario? If you give them the rules, can they really visualize and see what it would look like in practice? Because to your point, reading a documentation, I can go through a documentation and I can understand how things are done procedural wise there. But it doesn't mean when I actually get into the application itself, I'm actually going to know exactly what to do. I know roughly kind of where things are, but I'm not going to be effective right away until I go through and do some practice workflows that simulate the things I've been learning in the documentation. Similar to football, I can read the rule book and I can know what an offside is.
The drill.
I know what a penalty is. I know what a goal kick is. All of those rules. I know when yellow cards and red cards, roughly. That's not that true science. It's always up for debate. In our interpretation, but I can read the rule book and understand about what it is. But until you actually get into the real gameplay itself, then you're not going to know how those interact with each other. It's the interactions that you do not get in documentation or the rules.
It's in game design terms, it's called the dynamics. So you can know how all the mechanics work, but the dynamics are emergent. They tend to come out of new and interesting situations. And these new and interesting situations only come about when you are managing to get people to play, get people to engage. The other great advantage of games is that they offer a space in which normal failure is reduced. The cost of normal failure is reduced. I don't feel bad if I lose all my money in Monopoly. I would feel pretty bad if I lost all my money in the stock market.
Yes.
Okay.
But they're very, very similar approaches to the rules.
Yeah. Similar rules, but there's a lower cost associated with them. And when there's a lower cost associated with them, people have a tendency to respond more creatively. Honestly, I think one of the problems, or one of the potential problems that can happen with capture the flag exercises, is when players get too focused on achieving the goal,
Yes,
rather than can you achieve it in a weird and wacky way.
that's one of my favorite things doing capture the flags, is that my purpose of the capture the flag is not to get the flag.
Uh-huh.
It's the journey to getting the flag.
Yes.
And what I look at is that during that journey, what did I learn? What did I learn?
Yes.
What was the interactions I had along the way? What was new? And then what I try to do is, I remember doing my introduction to gamification a couple of months ago, and as I was going through that process, somebody asked a question in the audience, was like, oh, "Can you do it this way?" I was like, "Actually, I've never thought of that, but I'm interested now in seeing if it's even possible." So now I go back and I've been trying to see, can I do it in different methods than what was the intention or the way that I've been taught. I want to see if there's ways that you can do that has never been thought of.
Find the ways to break it.
Yes, the jailbreaking is, and that's the true nature of hackers in general, is that's the mindset.
You want to poke the system. You want to poke the system and figure out how it works and why it works that way. And wait a second, what would happen if I kicked it this way?
Which is always fun. The friend of mine, Sick Codes, he was the one that got Doom to play basically on a John Deere tractor, just to see if it's even possible. Because it's got the same processors and the same computational capability. Is it even possible?
Yes. My other favorite one is the person who managed to tweet via their Samsung smart fridge. An interesting area of study is Bartle's player typologies. And this, if you're doing gamification, this is something, or game design for training, this is something that you should take a look at. Really, it's designed for multiplayer games. But even then, it's been widely applied, and Bartle would probably say misapplied, to every game out there. But the idea of it is that there are different ways that people find enjoyment in games. And we find a pattern of 4 distinct types. So we find our achievers, the people who want to get the goal, collect the points, get everything. They complete 100% of the game and everything like that. You have your explorers who aren't necessarily interested in the points, but they're interested in, how does the system work?
Yes.
How do they know everything and every route through the game possible? Then you have your socializers, and your socializers aren't actually there to play the game. They're there to hang out with their friends. They're here to have a little bit of the crack and a little bit of the joy. Yeah. Sorry, for any American audiences.
For the international
a little bit of the fun.
Crack means fun.
Yeah, okay. Just for the American audiences there for a second. So a little bit of the fun and everything like that. They're there for the social aspects of it. And then we have the killers. And the killers are interested in winning, but they're more interested in not so much them winning as somebody else losing, beating somebody else. So hyper-competitive, goal-orientated, but goal-orientated to beat someone. And the thing is that we find all of these behavior patterns in a classroom. We find all of these people in the classroom, but almost all of the training out there, almost all of the method of designing courses and gamified systems only speak to the achievers. They tend to be over-designed for, and we leave all of the others to the side. And we tend to devalue the explorers and the socializers. Whereas actually in a business, the explorers are the people who know the system so backwards and forwards that there's nothing that can happen that is going to shock them. And the socializers know exactly which explorer to point you to solve the problem.
They make the connections.
They make the connections between the people. The hard skills that are, I'm not going to devalue them or anything like that, they're really important, especially in security, are easy enough to train. But the soft skills, we need to give spaces and areas to train the soft skills and to get the technical people familiar with the soft skills to be able to communicate throughout the entire organization as a whole.
To explain it so that everyone understands, not just themselves. How do you stay up to date? What's the things? What game do you play? What's your go-to game?
One of the classic problems with studying games is you never get enough time to actually play them. But in games that I play, I have tended to move from digital games to more board games, hence the stuff behind me. But digital games, the most recent one that I've been playing a lot of was Space Marine 2, because I'm a huge Warhammer nerd. The other one that I played quite a lot of was Sniper Elite, because I enjoy the sneaking and the stealthy planning element to it. I'm not very good at first-person shooters, but yeah, well. But in terms of games that I play most regularly, I have a weekly session of Dungeons & Dragons that I run for my partner and her friends. Also, I unfortunately, my partner is better. I'm better at understanding games and knowing how them, and my partner kicks my ass every single time.
I know that feel.
Yeah. So I understand exactly how the system works and where the system, and she just seems to grok them really quickly and easily and just kicks my ass. So I got her a copy of Azul. If you ever get a chance, Azul is a beautiful game for, I'd say, to 60-year-old players, because it's just tile matching. But it is just a beautiful, lovely game.
Yeah, we played the color game recently. Like that's I'm trying cues and clues, which is the color. Like you've got the whole aspect of color, and you have to try and then determine by explaining something what color it is. It's a fun game to do. It's more of the social type of game that it is. That there is an element of scoring and progress, but it's more of kind of how to explain colors.
Yeah,
in a way.
Concept is another beautiful game like that. Pandemic. This one here is a really great game because it's cooperative. And this is the thing, is that the renaissance in game design and board game design, starting in these early 2000s with the advent of the Euro games, brought in a whole range of new dynamics, a whole range of new mechanics and dynamics that expanded out the nature of play of these things. You have cooperative games, you have games with the traitor mechanic games, which are beautiful models if you're ever looking to get somebody to understand insider attacks. They're absolutely fabulous there.
Yeah, there's a couple of even messing the games up is always fun. We've played the ones where you have a progress and all of a sudden something changes the game. You either had to change cards to the person left or right, or that the purpose of the game is actually to lose. Flux is one of my...
Flux, I love the concept of Flux. I absolutely hate playing it because I'm like, now the rules have changed.
Everything has changed. The rules, which is, it's a very creative method.
Yeah.
So it's one of the things is, for the audience, definitely, how, if they're interested in learning more, what would you point them to? Let's say, what type of resource, if they want to learn more about game dynamics and other concepts, what would you recommend for the audience to go and find more?
The most approachable one for game dynamics, where I started, was Jane McGonigal's book, Reality is Broken.
Okay.
And that's a good primer and it's a lovely argument piece that games have the potential to actually change the world and make it better. And it's a beautiful antidote to the traditional narratives that we hear of games are addictive, games are addictive, games are addictive. Well, yes, but how can we leverage that to make the world better?
How can we make us better people from?
Okay. In terms of game design, there are some beautiful books out there. I recommend to my students, because I do teach game design and gamification. One of the books I recommend to my students is A Play-Centric Approach to Game Design by Tracy Fullerton. When it comes to cybersecurity games, specifically, there is the Cybersecurity Wargame Handbook, Cyber Wargaming Handbook. Which is interesting, but I have chatted with the authors and muttered that a couple of the things that they talk about are a couple of misinterpretations of some of the things in my mind. But it will give you a primer of how wargaming training happens. Let's see. If you're looking for just what board games and things to do, Board Game Geek is a wonderful resource. And the other thing is, everybody should have my name at this. Take a look at the things that I've published. I've published several articles on game design and different uses of game design for a range of security studies, not just cybersecurity.
I'll make sure that we add them to the show notes as well, so that people can easily find them. So
wonderful.
And if the audience really want to reach out and connect with you, what's the best way?
To.
What's the best place to do that?
Via email is the best way to get a hold of me, either email or LinkedIn. And I'm more than happy to sit and talk about games and security studies and everything like that for hours upon hours upon hours. But
maybe we do an episode on actually doing a game.
Sure. That would be a fun one to do.
I'll bring some of my peers in as well. We can actually have a proper live podcast game itself.
Well, this isn't a thing. I mean, one of the models that I use is playing Jenga to get people to understand the CIA triad.
Yes.
So the thing is that the tower itself represents availability, but you want to keep pushing the availability more and more and more. And unfortunately, as you do that, you end up building compromises into the system every time you're trying to push up availability. So again, or I could start talking about rock, paper, ransomware, which is just a very simple game, but it asks the question of why are we assuming that ransomware attacks are symmetric? Because they're not, but from a defender's perspective, they appear symmetric. From the attacker's perspective, being symmetrical is a way to waste time and resources. So having those.
We'll figure out another episode that we can go through and
sure,
and do the live, maybe even make it a live show, and we do it like a gaming lives.
Sure.
So it's fantastic having you on the show, and really enjoyed. And for me, I've definitely got now a new list of books that I need to go and read, which is always after every episode, my to-do reading list gets bigger and bigger. But definitely gonna take the time to have that as the reality.
Reality is broken.
So I'm gonna make sure that that's on my summer read, of which I will complete over the summer. So it's fantastic having you on, and really looking forward to catching up with you again soon. And for the audience, make sure that if you're interested in more, I'm going to put all of the links and all of the details in the show notes. Go look at the show notes for any of the links and the references and the books, and also how to contact Peadar as well. So thank you for being on the show. For everyone, stay tuned for the Security by Default podcast. Really here to bring ideas and also make sure that security is not just for the few, but for everybody. Security shouldn't be just by design. It should also be by default. And that's what this podcast is all about, to make sure that everybody gets the benefit of having security. And tune in, subscribe, share with your friends, share with your peers, and look forward to chatting with you all again in the near future. Thank you, and stay safe and take care. Thank you. Well, that's a wrap on this episode of the Security by Default podcast, where the only thing we leave unpatched is our sense of humor. I've been your host, Joseph Carson, reminding you to update your software and rotate your passwords. Subscribe, share, and review the podcast. And please stay safe, stay weird, and we'll catch you next time.